one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. We will have an agenda before us. Agenda item number 2 would be consider approving the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, we'll operate under that agenda and move to agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 is consider the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting that was held on July 28th. The council does have the minutes of that meeting. Are there any corrections to note?
Mr. Mayor, I may have been away, but I have been doing my homework, or trying to. There's an item here that describes the East College Drive. I'm on page 4, I believe. Maybe it's page 3 of the minutes. And I was curious if they meant East College or West College. Elaine, did you have an item? Why don't you go ahead with it? Okay, pardon me, it appears to be the top of page 5. You go down about 6 lines. Presently, the route between 2 segments of the bike trail system required traveling along the shoulder of East College Drive, Trunk Highway 19, and crossing the railroad tracks are grade. Did we mean West College Drive at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that should be west.
Thank you.
Yep. So we'll make that correction. Any other corrections? Thank you, David. If there's no other corrections to note, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Move approval
With that correction.
with the correction.
Is there a motion by Larry? Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Elaine. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
I'm not getting in. Thanks.
Motion passes. We'll note 1 abstention. Agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4, consideration of acquisition of the exterior signage for the new municipal liquor store. Ben?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of City Council, I added this stuff this afternoon, so this is probably going to be new information. I got the last proposal late yesterday afternoon, and I was kind of making sense of it today and came up with a recommendation. And signage is always, especially if it's outside of anything that's normal, is always a little bit tricky because it's kind of more of an art than maybe it is real specific. So basically the request that was sent out to local companies with sign companies related to the RFP on the signage kind of gave some general guidelines on it, but didn't have detailed specifications behind it because they all might vary a little bit, so it was fairly open-ended, and that's pretty common to do it that way when we've done these in the past. So it basically were 3 different signs that were looked at, realizing that really these first 2 here are going to be the ones that are the priority for the project. So what we're looking at is a monument sign at this location that would be viewable basically coming from both directions. It would be a ground mount one versus a more traditional pylon sign that would go in the air. Those signs, although there aren't maybe a lot of them in town, they are a common type of a sign, and was a preference for this particular project. And then we have a lettering on building location, and then for the future road connection that we had, since we own property all the way down, to try and get visibility for people that might be using Windstar Street, future development that might occur, and also maybe to catch some of the Highway 59 traffic that would be coming. To be visible would be the last one. And then when I talked to the companies about that, I indicated that that would be the one that would maybe, if there wasn't enough funds available, I didn't know that we could afford it, but I'd appreciate it might get worked into the capital plan. So this kind of gives an image. We worked with a landscape architect on some of the site grasses and things that will be on the landscaping plan, but they also did a little bit of a concept sketch, so it's shown here. I've got another visual on the one that's being recommended, but this shows a little bit of some of the detail that we're looking at. Be able to have an option to have a video board. One of the companies gave a proposal without a video board, and one just gave video boards as an alternative. basically this general look, a general size was given. And on the this wall feature wall, gave some direction on some wall signage for that. Wouldn't have the actual box logo, but we're looking for some metal lettering, and the lighting at the time wasn't defined. And I'll get into that a little bit. I think we've defined what we'd like now, so we're going to be recommending to go out for proposals on that one. And then the pylon sign was fairly simple, basically to go to the maximum height under the zoning code. I used this example because I did a Google search and found this one. It's a sample, so that's why I picked that one. Basically, that our logo would be on that pylon sign. The height would be similar to the maximum height's very similar to what Pizza Ranch's pylon sign is. So we'd stay within our zoning requirements. So that's a little bit of background on what the proposal was for that. I've got a number of different proposals that came in, varying types, but basically I'll start with the monument sign, which is one I'm recommending to actually move forward with tonight. So Awards Plus in Western Printing has a comparable proposal. Awards Plus is slightly less than theirs is, but basically this is kind of a visual of it. There would be a video board on one side. It would not be on both sides, recognizing that cost comes into play, I guess, at a certain point, and felt that although there's traffic going both ways, the primary entrance is off Marguerite, and so what we're trying to avoid is having like temporary banners out on site that can sometimes take away from the aesthetics of it. So yes, there is a added cost to put it in up front. To have a video board, it seems like the world's kind of going that way more, and so we're recommending the one that would have that video board on one side. It's got basically it's a stucco finish over the top of that. The tall grass logo would actually be backlit, so it'd be one of those, plastic's not the right term, but a hard illuminated from the backside that you can see in both directions from that. It's a similar height to the temporary construction sign that's out there now, and about I think it's about 4 feet wider than the one that's there, so that gives you a little idea of the scale of it. So that total cost was $36,645. Western Printing's proposal, let me see here. Computer's thinking a little bit. I'm going to go off of my own and just verbally do it for now and see if this is catching up. Very similar sign Western came up with, slightly larger. They were based on their proposal, but pretty much comparable to it. Was $38,994.20, but I believe they both, in effect, achieved the same thing, have a very similar look to it. Exact same type of LED Dectronic sign board, so that would be it's a pretty comparable sign. So very close in pricing to it, which I think is a positive thing to see that they're close with that. So that was the alternative one that we received. Now, I did get a number of other proposals. Awards Plus gave a two-sided one. Again, I think it's just a cost issue on that one. It jumps up to about $54,000. To have the video board on both sides. And then this is a good visual on the Awards Plus. They gave some visuals on theirs, whereas Western didn't. Kind of gives an idea of height. That would be the pylon sign. Very similar size, actually, to the Pizza Ranch that's right next door as far as the total sign of the area of the thing. But basically, based on our project scope, I don't think we have the funds that I'd recommend that we do that one now, but we could add it into our capital improvement plan if we wanted to do that. I think someday it would be good to have it down at that site. The last one would be the lettering. We got a couple different. Western basically gave a proposal Awards Plus gave a proposal for the lettering on building to basically be metal ones, and it didn't define the lighting on it. Basically had almost a 2-foot tall lettering for it on that building, and then they were going to work with us on how it would be laid out on the finish. They didn't address the lighting on that one. I'm going to jump down to the, and then Western gave a proposal that had the This is the western one without the LED sign on it. Comparable. They had a two-sided one, and then Western did two ones. They did plastic formed letters for the on-building sign as one alternative, and then they did one that was actually a backlit sign where the actual letters light up right within it. So that's common, like in malls and things that you see. So that was their proposal, and I'm going to jump to that one for the on-building sign. That I gave us a little update here. We're recommending, I think, through this process. I was working with both companies on kind of defining what would work best on that wall for the sign, and I think through this process, I've come up with what I think would be, in working with staff, would be a good alternative. But neither one of them really did it exactly this way, so I wanted to give an opportunity to kind of both of them give a shot at it. So basically what we'll be looking at is the lettering, the tall grass, and then liquor underneath it with a hyphen of the grasshopper, which is what was proposed on the original ones that they had. But basically do a Western, I think Western was proposing something like this. This is what there was in the RFP. It would be to do it where the liquor is down below. There is no S, so this was based off of an old concept sketch, but the liquor would go underneath it. I think it centers better on the wall than going lengthwise when we went out there and looked at the site. And then basically we do a combination of lighting. The wall itself would have some flood lighting on it, and then the individual letters would have a backlit to the lettering, which they didn't have on there. They had the actual letters. I think it gets a little messier look with the sign. Both of them said it could be done and wouldn't have a huge cost impact. So what I'm basically recommending back on here, going back down, I guess, and I can give a greater explanation of all this, is I got three different recommendations. One would be to recommend approve the monument style sign with Awards Plus that would have a one-sided LED matrix display board on it for $36,645. Second recommendation is to reject all the other proposals that we received. I would tell them about the pylon sign, that I'd plan to work it into the capital plan and that we wouldn't be doing it with this project. And then the last one would be to approve a new request for proposal for the on-building sign, and then I'd bring that back to the council on that one. That way it'd give them each a fair shot now that I've kind of defined it. And like I said, kind of took elements from both of them and kind of coming up with that final design, but I think that would be a good option for the final store. So with that, it opened up to any questions you might have.
Thank you for your work on this also. Questions for Ben?
So the requested amount here is about 50% more than what was in the budget?
Yeah, you know, the ones that are always, signage is always kind of a weird one on these construction budgets because the architects probably don't put a lot of effort into it, and generally early in the project you aren't working with a sign company because you aren't defining exactly what you want. I mean, if you say, I want a pylon sign and I know I just want a simple one, and that can be estimated pretty good, but TSP had put $25,000 in there. On the internal budget, I built in quite a bit of extra contingency, so I've got plenty of extra because I knew that wasn't enough for the signage. So with the dollar amounts on the $36,000, we've got plenty in there for the project scope to be able to get this sign purchased and the other one within that as well. But the actual internal itemized amount that TSP originally had was $25,000, and I think originally what they were looking at was only doing the on-building sign, and I just don't think there was a lot of effort put into that, and that's why I built up the contingency early on. One of the other things was we were looking, so I think TSP's basically was factoring in this as the only sign to it. Now, we were talking about putting a logo up here at one point, but as we evaluated these different options, we decided instead of having two here, why not just have this one? Gives a little bit different look and sits on that kind of feature wall, and then have the freestanding one out by the road, which is probably the most important with catching traffic. So that's kind of the thinking about it, but there are funds available within the project scope to be able to purchase that.
Any other questions for Ben? Now we'll act on these one at a time. The first recommendation is the monument sign. Recommended to be awarded to Awards Plus in the amount of $36,645.
I'll move recommendation number one.
Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by David. Discussion?
Ben, it's only faces one way? I mean, is it on both sides the sign or just one?
No, well, okay, I'll pull that back up here again. Just, so this logo is on both sides. So if you're coming from Menards, you would see that sign without the message board sign if you're like heading towards Highway 59. So you would not see a message board on that side. The message board does face, if you're coming from the stoplights off 59 coming into the site, you would be able to see the message board from there. So it is only one-sided on the message board, but the backlit logo will be facing both directions with that. And again, I see us, the message board will be used for specials and things, but it also might be saying, like, we're doing tastings right now, so there's tasting, that kind of a thing. But again, we felt that based on our kind of our project budget and things, we wouldn't recommend that going to that some $1,000 jump to go to a two-sided one.
It would also be facing the street that the entrance to the parking lot is
Yes, yes.
Could you show a big map of what it?
Yeah, so I'll go back to this one again. So again, it's this would be that location. So the message board is facing this way. So this is 59. So if you're coming in, this is the entrance point. So you'd be going past it and into the store.
I guess I'm wondering, how big, how visible from like the highway.
I don't.
A high school sign. They got a sign down by the high school, and really, when you're a long way away, how much of it do you see?
You're not going to see a lot from the high. I'm not sure you're going to see it at all. In fact, we did look at a pylon sign option with Pizza Ranch, and you can see that that's what it is there. Pizza Ranch probably has better brand recognition nationally, or at least regionally, for people to draw their eye to it. But I think it's going to be more for localized traffic and capturing it that way. I think we'll be using other ways to get people there too, through social media and other marketing techniques to get awareness of the store.
A number of the signs that have the lettering on them, like banks and so forth, they're way up in the air, so and visible by people that drive by. And here ours is going to be way down on the ground. Does it make more sense to have it up in the air where it's more visible to people and bigger so they can read it?
I did talk to our sign companies about that. They liked it for our store. I think there's two different trains of thought. Is high might give you better visibility for the logo from the highway. I would say low for the message board purposes is actually better because drivers' eyes are going to be more at an eye level where they're going to be able to see it. Whereas I think when they're driving down the road and it's high, it's your eye isn't naturally going to that height. Those are some of the discussions I had with the companies, because I did debate them and said, we're looking at a ground mount one. They liked it, so, and I wasn't pushing them. I did debate going to a pylon one, but it's kind of one of those you can look at it at either perspective. You could probably argue it either way.
Other discussion on the motion?
I think just kind of carrying on to what Glenn was talking about, I understand then that the pylon sign will go into as a potential capital project down the road, and that might, seeing how things go, might help us place and size that for recognition. I know one thing is height, the other thing is size, right? If we're looking for visibility from the highway, traveling at 45 on the highway, I don't think we want to try to have people read the message.
And we have
30 miles an hour is probably not too bad, but otherwise it's kind of like texting.
A lot of it's kind of obstructed too, because on this you're not going to see it. The Runnings building is so large there that obstructs a lot of the location that we're at. So even if we had it and you were visible, you're not going to catch a lot of it just because that building covers so much. And then from the other direction, there are stoplights and things too that block the view a little bit. So we did drive it and look a little bit too.
One of my suggestions is more concerned about capturing people that would have visibility in Walmart, because Minnesota has some of the only Walmarts that don't have on sale. And so, picking up the ability to have people in Walmart that aren't regular Marshallites know that we have a liquor store right adjacent. That would be my bigger concern, is making sure that we're visible to the people in Walmart.
Right. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
Motion passes. The second action is to reject the other proposals. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by John. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. And then the third action would be to consider the RFP for the signage to be located on the building.
I move the request for proposals for signage to be located on the building.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Ben?
Mr. Mayor, one other thing I should mention too, I'd like some ability to maybe adjust the deadline because I haven't talked to the sign companies yet about this, and I'd like to make sure that they can actually get the proposal done by, I think I have it on Tuesday at noon, so I want to be able to have some flexibility within that. Just wanted you guys aware that I was going to potentially tweak that, but the rest of it's pretty much straightforward. So
that's assumed with the motion and second.
I'm good with that.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 5. Agenda item number 5 is the consent agenda. We'll bring the items up on the screen for the consent agenda. Included on the consent agenda are consider approval of the agreement relating to the paying agency, registrar, and transfer agency. Consider the addition of the voluntary employee benefit for vision insurance. Consideration of the temporary extension of the alcohol license for Brau Brothers Brewing Company, 1010 East Southview Drive, on September 11th and 12th, 2015. Consider the approval of the bills and the project payment. Is there any item on the consent agenda that any member of the council wants removed for purposes of a separate discussion?
Number 8.
Number 8. Any other item?
Move the consent agenda, less 8.
Motion by Larry. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Craig to approve the consent agenda as it has been revised. Discussion? We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 9, which is the item that was removed from the consent agenda. Glenn, do you have a question on this, or you just want to move?
Well, I noticed in the application form that it talked about contacting nearby businesses to assess special needs or concerns. And I know that Car Properties has signed off on this. I was just wondering, have they ever talked to Perkins and what their experience was last year and how they feel their customers are affected by the noise and the sounds?
Tom, I don't know if I can answer that question to you. I can say generally just I don't know. He had indicated that he had talked to them in the past. I don't know about this time. I believe Perkins is under new ownership, and I'm not sure if the new owners are aware of kind of the event that's occurred in the past, but we'd certainly, if a council approves it, we'd certainly, when we call him about the permit, could mention to him to make sure with the new ownership to talk to them in regards to that issue. I'm not aware of any complaints in the past on any of the projects. I think the last couple of years that they've done this.
I just see a good policy for them to contact their neighbors and get their approval before they move ahead with this. And I think it's somewhat the same thing that happened last year. I don't know if they did talk to all their neighbors about it beforehand, and I just think that's the neighborly thing to do, is to check with your neighbors and see if it disrupts their business or their customers.
I'd like to add that I did have a conversation with the manager of Perkins last year, and he was happy to have that event in the parking lot because he said it brought more business to him. And in fact, he even advertised a little bit in Perkins about that. So no, this is what he told me last year.
Okay.
Any other questions? The one question that I have is 2 days rather than 3 days. Last year it was 10-11, or it was through Sunday?
Yeah, I don't know if Tom or Jane, if you have anything to add on the 2-day versus the 3. I know they had a few things last year, but I guess we did not ask anything on that, but yes, it does look like it's 1 day shorter than it was last year.
Okay.
I would just say that go ahead and support this, but it's based on the understanding that the neighbors are in favor of this and have no objections. If I hope that's the case, and if that's not the case, I wouldn't be voting this way. So, but I do think in the future it'd be good if they let us know that they've talked to all the neighbors and all the neighbors have consented and have agreed to this.
With that, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the extension.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by David. Discussion? Now we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 10. Agenda item number 10, consider the approval of the purchase of an ice resurfacer for the Schwann Regional Amateur Sports Center, Arena, and Expo. Ben, do you want to start with this?
We'll start maybe, I know Preston for sure, who did the research, could come up while I'm giving a little bit of background on it. As we were doing a lot of preparation work on furniture, fixtures, and equipment for the ice arena as well as our other projects right now. And I think one of them, as we were putting our spreadsheet together on what would we like to have, what do we need to have, what cost estimating with it, Preston, on filling in the numbers on the Zamboni, found out that there was quite a long delivery time period involved in a Zamboni, so we had to quickly scramble to come up with specifications, and he did all the legwork and research on that. So it's imperative, I think, that we look to move forward on this piece of equipment. We knew that we needed one Zamboni with it. It eats up a lot of, I think we had about $125,000 in that portion of it, planned to primarily go to just the Zamboni, but we got some other funding plans coming that are going to be presented into you in the near future that would allow extra dollars in to cover all of this. But with that lead time that's required, we need to get this ordered. So Preston's done the research. I'll turn it over to him to talk about this model, and it is off of it's off of a qualifying bidding, public bidding process, so that's already covered without having to go through a separate RFP. So I'll turn it over to Preston.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The proposal you see before you is for an electric Zamboni, not like the current ice facility operates with the propane Zamboni, and under the new facilities and safety and emissions and stuff, we're not allowed to reutilize that propane due to, I'm not sure if you guys remember, this past winter, Wisconsin had several carbon monoxide poisonings in the arena from propane Zambonis. So they're actually outlawed, I believe, in Minnesota and maybe in other states too. But so upon talking with Zamboni, they're a single source. You can't get prices from anybody else. You can't go through, there's no dealers. You deal directly with Zamboni. They are on the National Joint Powers Alliance, which did give us, I think it's like a 3% discount or something like that. Takes away from the bidding process, which you wouldn't bid another Zamboni anyways. You'd have to go to like an off-brand ice resurfacer, and I don't recommend doing that. This is the smaller of the two versions. There's nothing as far as motor size, options like that. There's really nothing a person can change. There's a couple options that are added on here that, like the board brush is a hydraulic brush that comes out from the unit itself that sweeps the ice chafe from along the board, so you don't have to sweep it with a broom or by hand. So cut down on maintenance costs. And that wash water system, those are the big expensive add-ons that are going to cut down on maintenance but improve your quality of ice. That allows the unit to adjust water flow being put onto the ice automatically as you slow down or speed up the machine. Otherwise, it's one rate. If you stop, slow down, you're going to have a thicker sheet or uneven ice. So the other stuff is just stuff that the sales rep recommended doing. We did include on here the 6 additional sets of blades. There's 2 augers on the machine. That's your main maintenance cost. I think they're like $250 each if we buy them through this, where I think they're close to $500 if you just buy them as a part. So he said he would highly recommend ordering them with them. Plus they'll get shipped here and we won't pay shipping on them. And then the battery edger that's also included in this proposal is to go along the dasher boards to cut down the ice from the water buildup. There again, we're saving, I think it was like $800 to ship that out if we order it separately. So the other stuff is all pretty straightforward. Like I say, there's nothing as far as, I talked to Ben about if this should go to the equipment review. It's a pretty specialized piece of equipment, and there's not a lot you can change on it anyways. So I would recommend approval. I'm entering into contract with Zamboni, and they said they will make sure it's delivered here the day that we need it. So.
Very good. Thank you, Preston. Questions for Preston?
The Zamboni that they're using right now is privately owned, then?
Yep, I believe that's owned by the Hockey Association.
And it seems like what's happening here is where we used to have private contributions and funding, it's all being replaced by taxpayer dollars. And I think we want to encourage as much as possible private contributions and private involvement in these things and not have it all paid by the taxpayers. So I certainly hope we're working with these organizations to have them continue their funding efforts, because there isn't as much drive behind them, I would think. If the taxpayers are going to pay for everything, why should they go out and have fundraisers and try and raise money to promote certain sporting activities? And so I certainly want us to encourage these private organizations to continue working hard to provide funding and not just rely on taxpayer dollars.
Any other question for Preston?
Glenn, I think in response to that, as far as the Zamboni alone, we're going to use taxpayer dollars to do it, but also we're going to sell naming rights for that. There will be all kinds of different organizations that are step forward to allow that.
The other point to make too is that, while the local association would be one of the users, the main user actually would be tournaments that would bring visitors in and from other areas.
And I think that the piece too with the association, and I can't speak for them because I'm not a member there anymore, but they understand the value and the upbuild that this arena does for them and for their program. And I think the only issue comes to play is how they protect to some degree what they have for the cost. Marshall's done this right. Other communities that we compete with in the hockey programs here that have done similar facilities didn't do it like Marshall did, and that increased substantially the cost for those families to participate. And I think the association substantially recognizes and was quite on board with the furthering the efforts to get the arena here. So I think they do understand the participation. It's just a matter of getting the recognition for the past. And I think the only concerns don't really come with the day-to-day equipment. I think it just comes with the facility and how that's exchanged. So it doesn't really affect the city. But I do think, Glenn, you make a good point, and I do think there's a recognition there, because I think those families, both in hockey and in the figure skating club, really recognize what a prize that they're getting here for boosting their ability to recruit and retain, and also the quality of tournaments and games that they play. The fact that the city and the Amateur Sports Commission is going to be able to bring in those higher level tournaments is going to increase the viability of Marshall's program and give it a future for quite a while. So I think that is recognized, but I think you make a good point.
Other discussion or questions? If not, you have the recommendation from staff.
I move the recommendation to purchase to order the Zamboni and get that moving forward for $135,099.90.
Second. Motion by Craig, seconded by Larry. Discussion? Now we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Preston. Agenda item number 11. Agenda item number 11, consider the award of proposals for the wastewater treatment facilities Biosolids mixer project. With us tonight, Glenn, do you want to introduce? And then with us tonight is Bob Van Moore from the wastewater department.
In council, Bob is here to explain the process by which the system is used in our wastewater treatment, and maybe just a little background too, Bob, concerning how well the system operates, and it gets so thick that you can't get it out. Okay.
Good evening, Council Mayor. This is a project that we've been trying to deal with for several years. We have these big, beautiful sludge storage tanks, the blue tanks there. They're 101 foot diameter, and they hold about 1.7 million gallons each. With our new ATAD system, we're able to decant the water off that and just naturally thicken those biosolids up, so it saves a tremendous cost on hauling and time and everything. By reducing down from 2.5% of real watery sludges, we're able to decant that water off and get it up to like 6 or 7% solids. So we drastically reduce the amount of solids that we're hauling out. Part of the problem is we currently have one large 125 horsepower mixer in a pump room that mixes both of those tanks, and that mixer was never designed to mix that thick of a solid, for one thing. Currently, if we're up in that 6 or 7% solid range, we can only have about 12 feet of solids in those tanks, which are a 22-foot tank. Otherwise, it won't take the head and keep those things mixed up. It's critical that we mix those. So once we sample that tank, that's what we report, and that's what we have to apply on the farm field. If we're putting 15,000 gallons an acre of biosolids out there, we got to let that farmer know and follow the rules and say that it's going to give us 140 pounds of nitrogen, which is the agronomic rate. It has to be consistent from the minute we start hauling until we finish. If we get too much nitrogen on or not enough nitrogen on, it's a really detriment for the farmer. And then we also have the potential of over-applying, and that's potential of nitrates going down into the groundwater. So it's real critical that we keep these things mixed up. We've been looking at different methods and trying to brainstorm how we could actually get these things working better. I came across this top yellow one on the left. A salesman came by last year and showing these things. It's got a new design on the prop there. They can do a tremendous amount of mixing for much smaller horsepower. That prop is actually sticking through. If you look on the picture next to it, that bolts onto a hatch on the side of the blue tank, and all the motor and everything is external except the prop. So these can actually be sealed off if I have an issue with a bearing going out or a motor issue or a seal failure. I can isolate this thing off with a full tank and still replace those components outside the tank. Tremendous advantage. I had 3 quotes on here. One was for 2 of the yellow mixers, and then we have to install 2 of these hatches that's down in the bottom left. That's what the mixer would mount to, just like in the upper right. That's the second quote, and then the third quote was for the electrical. We do have to add some more electrical control banks and variable frequency drives to operate these. But the 2 30 horses will give us the advantage to mix one tank or both tanks. A lot more flexibility. It's going to be a lot more mixing, a lot better mixing. Currently, that 125 horse would still be available if we need it for specialized stuff, but in the day-to-day operation, we'd probably be running 30 horse versus 125 horsepower. So, tremendous power savings that way also. Questions I'll answer.
John? Do you know about how much savings you're going to have? Because it should be a pretty significant
It will
decrease.
be significant on the power alone. To me, that's secondary to being able to keep these things mixed up and be in regulations.
Still going to be sizable. So.
Yep, it'll be a sizable and much easier manpower, everything. So.
Bob, you'll still be able to maintain those. You won't have dead corners. And
Nope, these actually do pivot 30 degrees, but hydraulic design of them. They've done models. They've actually got these sized for a 20% solid. So if we're not mixing and that stuff settles out and gets real heavy on the bottom, these will be able to resuspend that up. So perfect. Yep.
Malt makers.
Yeah. They're designed for like the big frac tanks there. They've got them installed in 300-400 foot diameter tanks that keep gravel and the dirt and everything out of this fresh mines oil and stuff like that. So do a tremendous job.
You're saying we have a 125 horsepower mixer now,
Yes.
and we're going to 230s.
Yep, and we'll be able to I would say all of the time we'd be able to run these 230s versus the 125. But the 125 will still be available if we need to do larger mixing or just to get these things a kick. I don't see us running that very often. Currently, a lot of times when we run that now, we actually start our generator and go off the grid and power that 125 horsepower just to keep our demands down for the month. So it gets to be kind of a hassle to run that big motor anyhow. So.
You indicated that it was designed around large crude oil tanks. So have they used it much for what we're planning to use it, or?
They use it for all types of different things, yeah. The new prop design is the key to getting the most mixing for the lower horsepower. Yep. These will be on a variable frequency drive, so we can adjust how fast or slow we need to do that as the tank comes down, so we don't start malting everything up.
With regard to this item, I assume the recommendation or the motion would be to approve the purchase of these plus the wiring. Would the motion also include amending the budget and increase it by the $127,000? Would that also be included as part of the motion then?
Yeah, we're trying to be more specific on these budget adjustments to document them on the fiscal impact. I haven't. My intention was, talking to the finance director, that we would just list them in the fiscal impact when there's an adjustment so that you have disclosure that would be part of it. And then Tom would make it a part of his notes then for his file for his budget adjustments later that would just tie back to this. So I didn't have it specifically in the motion, but because it's a public record in here, he would basically keep an ongoing file on those when it's been presented, that's the impact. If you guys think we ought to actually have that in the motion, we can do that, but the resolution later will be the formal action that will be the adjustment that comes forward on it.
Well, I'm thinking the purpose of the budget is to designate how much can be spent, and if we're going to spend more than what was designated before, why don't we just go ahead and approve the budget, amending the budget so that that's part of the authorization, saying you can spend this much money, and to me it makes sense to go ahead and do that in the same motion.
Bob, in your opinion, we're utilizing or purchasing this now versus a year from now, the cost savings that we would have in input costs and also the interest, et cetera, would more than offset the price increase?
I believe so, and part of it is timing too. Come fall, when we get our biosolids applied, those tanks are empty. We start filling them immediately, and they're building all winter long. So if we would wait until next year's budget and have this as a budgeted item in 16, then we have to deal with all that sludge that's stored up. We have to have these tanks empty so they can be clean, new hatches cut into them, and things like that. So timing-wise, it would work much better for the budget adjustment. And, inflation is going to go up next year also, so it's one of those deals.
Bob, do with this? Are you going to, just start filling one tank, set up, and then transfer into the other tank and take number 2 down and do it that way? Or?
They're talking a 12-week delivery on this equipment, so I'm hoping that we'll have most of our biosolids out by then.
So you'll be able to do them both simultaneously?
Perfect, yep. So
okay,
good. That we can do them simultaneously.
David?
Bob, building on the ZAMBONI discussion, potential resale for the existing unit?
No, I don't believe so. That unit was installed in 2001. It's an older unit already. It's specially designed for that. We can use that for a sludge transfer pump between the tanks if we need to move a lot of. It's rated for 5,000 gallons a minute. It's basically a pump, is what it is. The mixer basically sucks from the tank and discharges.
Spot use
There'd be potential for spot uses on it yet. The market value wouldn't be worth trying to get rid of it.
Any other questions? If not, thank you, Bob, for the explanation. You have the recommendation. What's the wish of the council?
I'll move the approval of the wastewater biosolids mixer project. Total cost of $127, and adjust the budget as need be.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Larry. Discussion? We'll move to a vote. Oh, Glenn, you have an item? No?
I didn't hear the motion, but that was...
It included the budget adjustment.
Right, but I was just, the cost is more than 127, right? It's just that the budget's going to be adjusted to 127, is that correct? Because there's two 75,000 mixers, and then there's the...
It's 127. It's not 75,000 apiece. So,
Oh, that's, okay, that's the, I was saying it was 75,000 each, so, okay, yeah, that's fine.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you. Agenda item number... Agenda item number 12 is South Minnesota Amateur Sports Center project. We have a change order to consider. In fact, we have a number of change orders to consider. We'll take these one at a time. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can see several change orders, and I'll just address them individually, briefly. Number one change order is with Bisbee Plumbing and Heating to add drains in the mechanical room for wash downs or maintenance. It was oversight. Number two is for the paintings and coatings contract decrease, and I want to look at the contract decrease for paint credit in lieu of the ceramic tile. Now, there was a ceramic tile project increase. This is just a deduct for taking off the painting that was there. The damp proofing and waterproofing, there was a waterproof membrane on the second floor, and that was reduced to a traffic coating, which is a different type of sealer. Certainly reviewed and recommended for approval for the cost savings of that amount. The electrical one was the reduction due to the city supplying the fixtures to be installed by L&S, and maybe a comment on that. Those fixtures, are you aware, have those been acquired yet? You know, Harry? Okay. Anyway, they're not to be purchased by the electrical contractor. They will be supplied by the city and installed by L&S.
Glenn?
Yes.
On that one, how much do you think we're going to save by doing them ourselves versus having the contractor?
I don't know the number for these, but generally our supply has been 30%, probably less than any other location we get locally. And okay, that was the last one. If you guys have any other input for that you're aware of.
Okay, thank you, Glenn.
It's been recommended by our consultant on the job, and we concur with his recommendation.
Thank you, Glenn. Questions on any of the four change orders that are proposed? If not, we'll take these one at a time. The first action would be the plumbing and heating with Bisbee Plumbing and Heating, a contract increase in the amount of $8,121.
I move the change order for contract 2200 with Bisbee Plumbing and Heating for the contract increase of $8,121.
Motion by Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? Now we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. The second one is the change order for the painting, coatings, with Steinbrecher Painting Incorporated. This is a contract decrease in the amount of $1,800.
I'll move the change order.
Motion by John.
Second.
Seconded by Larry. Discussion. We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. The third action would be the change order for temp-proofing, waterproofing, air and vapor barriers with DeCramer and Davis Incorporated. This is a contract decrease in the amount of $4,000. Motion by David, seconded by Elaine. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. And then the fourth action would be the change order for the electric low voltage with L&S Electric. This would be for a contract decrease of $22,433, recognizing that the materials will be ordered separately by the city.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Craig. Discussion? We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 13. Agenda item number 13 is the library parking lot extension. We have the change order, the final change order, as well as the acknowledgement of the final payment request. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You can see a slight decrease in the total construction cost of the parking lot. I think it's being utilized very well already, so recommend approval.
Any questions on this? If not,
I move approval of the change order and approval for the payment.
I second.
motion by Craig, seconded by Elaine. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 14. And item number 14 is the Commission Board Liaison reports. Actually, mine have not met since we last met. So, Craig?
We'll be meeting as the Library Budget Committee Friday morning at 7 o'clock with Mayor Byrne, Ben, and then with the three designees from the county to review the draft budget request from the library and to enter into discussions to try to get a final budget request to bring forward. I'll leave it at that.
Personnel met yesterday to discuss the construction of the job descriptions for Shane's replacement. Reorganize some building inspector roles, etc., job descriptions and a point system. Sports Center met at noon today. Paul Meyer from Maha is the new president, and he has been appointed as bylaws to the Sports Commission. Yesterday's tour brought great comments in general. August 14th, next Monday, there is going to be a press conference in the Amy Arena. And the track meet on August 1st went very well. The numbers were a little bit less than I'd hoped for, but a lot was learned. And going to hopefully host it next year, and it'll probably be in June, where they think there'll be a lot more participation rather than waiting till the end of the summer. That'll be it.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Glenn?
Public Housing Commission was supposed to meet yesterday, but we had a lack of a quorum, so we couldn't. Planning Commission will meet tomorrow.
Thank you. John?
Actually, mine have not met since the last meeting. However, since I wasn't at the last meeting, missed out on the opportunity to talk about the MMU Commission meeting, which was, for one thing, one of the first ones being a paperless meeting, which went quite well. We got a year in review, but one of the bigger items was the official completion of the Sandness pipeline construction, and complete with a small ribbon cutting ceremony in front of the plaque in the office. Couldn't quite do it out in front of the pipe. Just a couple of things of note on it. Going back, the engineering pre-bid estimate for the pipeline was $15,280,622. When the bids came in, the bids were down to $11,960,594. So about a little less than $4,000, less than estimated.
No, 4
Or
million.
$4 million, excuse me, $4 million.
That's yourself.
A lot of zeros. But the actual construction cost, when everything was done and completed, came in at $10,545,289. There was a number of things that went very well with the construction. Weather did work to our advantage on this one. The crews were able to keep on working for the most part. They ended up being able to, similar to some of the things we're doing in the sports arena, they purchased the piping, and the way that was controlled is they waited near the completion to buy the final piping and ended up needing less piping. There was very little breakage, very little damage, a couple of little changes here and there that saved some distances and some other items. Just basically a number of things that came together in the right direction and ended up saving a little over almost $1.5 million off of the original bid. So very pleased with the results. The water is running. It's things are going good with it. There was one minor leak that occurred in a seal. They've got that fixed up, everything taken care of. So that water is flowing into Marshall on a regular basis now. So good project, and it is complete.
So, thank you, John. Questions for John? David?
The Airport Commission met last Monday. Our only real item of business currently is continuing the master plan and the business plan. And Glenn, refresh my memory. When did we think we would have that completed?
A year and a half.
Okay.
I'm
Lengthy
going to say
process.
year to two, so I'll say a year and a half.
Okay.
Yep.
The PI&T committee meets next Thursday to talk about the assessment policy, and we're still trying to pin down a Ways and Means committee meeting. Looks like next week now.
Andy Lane.
The Community Service Advisory Board met was the last week, I guess it was, and we looked at some of the plans for the fall session of things that are coming out of the Park and Rec. So it was a good meeting, and that was about it.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. We'll move on then to council member individual items. Agenda item number 15. Greg?
No items, Mr. Mayor.
Larry?
I have none.
Glenn?
I have none.
Elaine?
None.
David?
A couple of things. First, thank you for the remembrances and the nice notes about my brother's passing and the memorial gift. Glad to be back and back in the swing of things here with the council. My family and I attended the night out event at Independence Park 2 nights ago, and was it last week already? Last week. Time flies. It does. I thought the setting worked very well, the location, the logistics. We had, I think, a lot of community interest. I think a greater variety of vendor displays and other events. So I think we have a great success on our hands. And I know a lot of credit goes to Kim Rupp, who coordinated that, working through the police department. A couple of constituent items. One of a constituent who's communicated with Councilman Schaefer and with Mr. Mardig, and as well as myself, about a couple of small projects. And then a couple in the newly developing neighborhood south of Highway 23, but also some discussion about infrastructure improvements to tie the neighborhood and the parks together. And some of that, I think, just from talking with Ben a while ago, could be taken care of yet this construction season. The rest of it needs to be longer-term planning, but we'll keep working on that. Some discussion about the problem that we have this time of year of on-street parking of recreational-type vehicles, boats, trailers, campers, what have you. There's an ordinance, a little bit of old history that I learned, that some years ago the council adopted a policy you could park such a vehicle on a city street for up to 48 hours between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And the very homely but very practical reason being we get it out of storage on Thursday night, load it up Thursday night so we can get away Friday. The cop comes along and harasses us by Friday morning. So, with all due respect to the police department, that's how it was put to me. So the ordinance was adopted to allow some flexibility. Now a couple of neighborhood concerns about how consistently that's being enforced or what level of activation by the police department. So we'll have a couple of discussions about that. Saratoga Street project continues. I had a chance to go do a little walking around and looking at it from the east side of the project, a little different perspective than what I'm used to. And as it happened, Glenn and Kim Jurgensen were out there at the same time and got a chance to chat with them and talk with Mike Check, the project manager. So excited to see how that's coming together. And I think, would you say, Glenn, that things are proceeding very smoothly by the timetable and we haven't seen any change orders yet, so I'm assuming the budget's working well for us.
Weather's been good and the progress is on time.
Very good. I believe that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. John?
Just brought up the police department. I've just mentioned maybe congratulations to the two officers that were written up in the paper this morning. It's certainly nice to see articles like that coming about in our city, and hopefully we never have anything like some of the other articles in the St. Louis area that come out. So nice to see a good article about a couple of police officers that did a good job. So thank you to them.
Thank you, John. One thing I would add to the discussion, we did have a meeting last week with the corridor manager from Minnesota Department of Transit for Highway 23, and also participating in that were the representatives of Lyon County also, to really get an update on the proposed study of Highway 23, evaluating each and every intersection for possible safety improvements as well as addressing speed. And the scope of that study is from County Road 33 to County Road 7. We also, as part of that discussion, looked at the total cost of that program, of that, and there's the expectation that there would be a local participation, and that the proposal is that local participation would be split out to correlate with the number of intersections that are there, and there's 10 intersections that are between and including County Road 7 and County Road 3. 8 of those intersections are city and 2 are county, so that's what the proposal for the local share would be. There was no commitment that had been made at that time. This is more information sharing at that time, and MnDOT will be coming back with kind of a more revised proposal of what that study would be, including what information as part of that study already exists, including like crash data and things like that, that MnDOT could contribute that would reduce the overall cost of the study. Glenn, anything you want to add to that?
No, that was a good description of it. They will be coming back with a revised request for information, so we'll be able to see the information that they're looking at in the study before we make any agreements.
So their intent is that this is a study that will not be done by MnDOT, that they will have a external professional engineering firm that will conduct the study.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll move on then to agenda item number 16. Staff reports. Ben?
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the council. Just a few updates. Of course, I know our staff's been busy gearing up for Sounds of Summer, and one of those items, so you see the fire department. I know as I drive by there, they're seeming to be tinkering on different things every day and doing some landscaping. Their bell's been installed, and now today I see their sign above the doors are going up, identifying it as the Marshall Fire Department. And so they're busy. I'm sure there's plenty of other things going on, parks working on things with that. But we also received the stage. The performance stage has been received. They did 2.5 days of training, which there was some skepticism, I think, initially that whether there was really necessary to have that much training. And in effect, they found out that it was. We got really positive feedback from the trainer about our staff that we had. We've got a number of different employees that were selected to be certified trainers of that stage that will be used. Staff's been working on a policy that's going to be coming forward to the council, recommended fees. We'll also include some application fees about who can use it, not ultimately for the council to give direction, but it's something that we crafted up for your review and feedback on that. I do know there's probably going to be some tweaking that might be asking for a little bit of extra funds with it. We'll see how that goes, though. We're kind of gearing all of it up for the end of the month. But, one example was that, when they sold the unit, the interior of it actually could also serve as storage of the extra pieces to extend the stage. And I think when they received it, I wasn't here, but when they received it, started kind of looking at it, it required lifting higher, and it appears that it would scratch some of the stage if we kept to use that. So they're thinking maybe a trailer would be better to store those extra pieces in. So we're looking at all those things, and we're still working on that, but there might be some slight amendments coming forward related to that. But the feedback for the people that were there that I think saw it as it was set up was pretty impressed. And I know the banners apparently were delivered to the Parks Department today to take a look at. So I know that Henley's helped us with that, and Mark Claith, who's working on the fire department with some of that, with the anniversary, to have some of that, is really excited about that and unveiling it. We are planning on we got a suggestion to do kind of a ribbon cutting with the stage at the first day of the activities. I think on Thursday night we're planning on it before the All My Favorites plays, I believe. So we haven't got all the details of that, but I think we'll have the mayor there, maybe say a few words and come up with a few other things, explain maybe some of the funding and the background behind it. With that, maybe we'd even leave something out so that people through the events had questions. We could direct them to maybe a little sign that would explain a little bit about the stage. So,
How about the lighting?
oh yeah, we're working on the lighting. One thing that was good news is there's a little bit of history behind that. I'll spare you the details of it, but we have not ordered or selected the lighting or sound system yet. But the good news is we found out that all of the performing bands for Sounds of Summer will have their own sound and lighting, that they will not need any of ours, is what they were told. In many ways, I think the sound and the lighting that we'll be using isn't really going to be for higher performers, probably, that would have a lot of that. It's going to probably be more local talent or something more on comparison to what you might see at a DJ type of a setup, where if we had an event going on, you wanted some background sound going on and some lights or something, that we could do that, but it's not meant to be kind of a high-level quality. So it might be something we grow into, but we are trying to find a local source to be able to buy that in town, and we're working with a staff person who's got some experience in working with that, that's helping us out, where our external persons, we've had a little bit of challenges of communications and things that we've been working through. So the good news is we bought ourselves a little bit of time, and we're still working on that, I guess. So we did, speaking of the stage, though, Brau Brothers is interested in using the larger stage for the Brau Fest this year. They were a good example of it not working well in the past with what they worked with. However, they realize that we haven't really adopted all of the policies that would be coming forward next meeting. They've seen our draft policy and our recommended fees, recognizing that might change, but we've kind of got them earmarked to be able to use that stage this year. And of course, Sounds of Summer, before any of this was adopted, we've been working with them on insurance and things, but there was no policy, so we just simply let them use it for this year on our first unveiling of that. So that's kind of on the back of our mind, that we'll probably be looking at putting that in action too in September. I know that we talked about the tour on the sports center. I am working on tours on the liquor store project. I think maybe an invite's gone out on that one. I don't remember the date exactly. I've seen some RSV, 21st. Okay. I know the media has been invited to that too. So, okay, 9 a.m. on the 21st. Great. So I assume we're going to need hard hats, just like we do at the sports center. So it's good to know kind of a head count that we've got, so we can make sure we got safety precautions taken care of. And I'm also trying to set up a tour on the Merit Center, which is progressing along very well. If you've been out there, the parking lot's paved, and it looks like a training center, not just a storage building now, I think, with the most of the windows in it, things too. So we're working on that. I know we're busy working on selections of some chairs and tables to order as well with that project. So a lot of work on the details going on with all these projects. It's also kind of that time of the year where budgets are getting worked on by staff, so we're working on that. We've got our first meeting Tuesday, which is going to be heavily based on kind of external requests and some other things, but we're also, we're probably a little bit behind where we normally are in the budget process here, just with all these projects going on, but we'll try and do some catch up on that too and have some information for you then. Following up on the Highway 23 in Saratoga, I think we've talked in the past about partnering with MnDOT on an educational video specific to Marshall and its project on how to navigate, and a little bit of background on the project as well. That's getting worked on. I have not seen a draft of that yet. They've done the video recording for it. The update that the communications from person from District 8 provided was that they expect in the next week to get a draft viewing of it, and then they want to have it fully complete by the end of the month, and we'll be working on a communication plan using multiple outlets to try and get it out to people. Cable access, Twitter, Facebook, probably trying to get out to some service clubs, those kinds of things. So great adult community center, great idea. So if you have any other ideas, we'll try and cover all the bases there, but I'm sure we'll make it accessible to you too if you want to forward it by emails to different groups. It's I think it'll probably be like a YouTube type of a link that we'll have on that too. So we're continuing to work on that. Just one last item, unless there's any questions. Next meeting, I'm sure we'll have a number of agenda items, but just a heads up that we have invited Senator Dames and Representative Swedzinski, who received an award from the League of Minnesota City for their distinguished legislative work. So we'll highlight some of those things that they worked on for us legislatively last year. And there's a chance the person from the League of Minnesota Cities, Gary Carlson, who's the head of legislative side of things, might be in attendance as well. So that'll be a nice event. And they certainly are deserving of that. So we want to give a local perspective of that too. So that's my report. If there's any questions, I can answer.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions for Ben? Okay, Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have a few things going on, one of which is the upcoming Sounds of Summer. Just so you know, we adjusted the parade route just a little bit, but generally it's going to be what you would normally expect. They'll come down Lion Street. They'll be able to go on Main Street all the way up to A Street. The contractor will have that intersection available for the parade at that time. So then they'll turn on A Street down to Marvin Schwann to College Drive, College to Main, and then out to 5th Street. So minor tweaking. Contractor is working hard on the sanitary sewer and storm sewer on Main Street. I would expect there'll be another month of construction for all the replacement of utilities, storm sewer all the way to the river. That portion is MnDOT's alone. That's coming along. A Street, again, it's combined with the issues that we have on Main Street. As you know, that was to be a mill and overlay, and the issues that we have on A Street now wouldn't have been an issue. But now access to some of the businesses between 1st Street and A Street, while A Street is torn up, is a little bit of a challenge, and we're working with the businesses along there to make that as least disruptive as possible, meaning it's certainly disruptive. Okay? But we're working with them on that. One thing about Sounds of Summer, and Ben talked quite a bit about the stage, I did go out there and took a look at the installation or the certification of the employees that we have that we're working on it. It is a real process. It takes some thought process and ingenuity, or at least knowledge of what you're setting up. And there are, I believe, 7 different configurations from the smallest to the largest. And there's a whole lot of material. He just alluded to it a little bit of the equipment that would have to be stored inside that trailer if in fact you were going to keep it in there versus outside, because it's different things for different activities. There's also a ADA operated ramp to get people from the ground up to the stage as well. So that's something that's available. We certainly won't be using it every time, but it's available for those that might need that. And when I went out there, it's not real hard to impress me. But this was really an impressive stage that's being set up. I hope you appreciate when you get to see it, what it is and what opportunity it provides for local groups to utilize that facility. From Farm Boy in North Dakota that uses a hay rack and a quartet. It's quite a different system nowadays. So when you get to see it, it's really something that will be around for a long time. It's well constructed. I will have to say too, he complimented us on our employees, but he was excellent. He was knowledgeable. Really challenged our employees for setting it up, and then he actually sabotaged the installation a couple of times, and asked the employees. Just said, "So what's wrong with it?" And they said, "Nothing's wrong with it. We set it up. It's right. What's wrong with it?" And okay, then it comes to mind. Somebody's done something to this, and they found immediately the things that he had done to make it unsafe. So that was a good instruction. It was 3 days worth, well worth every minute of it. The other projects, Councilmember Sturrock mentioned about Saratoga coming along on schedule. Probably late next week they might start delivering the beams on the south side, the precast beams. That will be a continuous process. They still have a couple of columns, a couple of piers to build. As soon as those are done and cured, you'll see kind of a steady supply of precast. And the precast are from each side of 23 out. And then it's steel for the inside. And those will be constructed on site. They'll be bolted together, a little job to do, and then raised in place, probably closing down Highway 23 for a short period of time as well. Three major construction projects with the Merit Center, Sports Center, and Liquor Store. All coming, the Liquor Store really jumped ahead in the last couple of weeks. We've had some problems with the block layers for timing at the Merit Center. All of our contractors have multiple jobs that they're doing. And they weren't there today, but they'll be here the next 4 days. So, and that kind of slows up other contractors. But I think they're on schedule as much as possible. Do you have any? One more thing. Bob Van Moore, before he left, asked me to at least mention about the Minnesota Court of Appeals decision upholding the MPCA regulations for water quality in rivers and streams. And that's one thing that we have been kind of actively involved with in this process. And specifically, not to oppose so much what they're doing, it's the technical information that they're utilizing for the decision-making process that we disagreed with. And we were involved, it was both the League of Minnesota Cities and the greater, the soybean growers and the League and the greater Minnesota Cities groups that were opposing it. What this will mean is there have not been, at this point in time, specific discharge parameters established, but it allows them under this rule to do that. We are fortunate in last year we had a renewal of our wastewater discharge permit for a 5-year period of time. So we will be maybe one of the last ones to have to implement the newer regulations, whatever they might be. Certainly more stringent than what we have today and significantly more expensive. Included will be increased phosphorus or decreased phosphorus limits, increased restrictions, restrictions on chlorides, restrictions on BODs or CBODs, phosphates, nitrates, and sulfates, most of them being dissolved solids. I could go on, but just so you know that the process is in place for the next time we have a change to our permit, we'll know about it in advance, but it'll be a significant increase in cost for any treatment process that we would have to add on to. Just wanted me to bring that to your attention.
I would assume those entities are now evaluating whether or not to appeal that further to this.
I'm sure they are evaluating the right of appeal, but the issue is not exactly what we were going after. The contesting that we were doing was their ability, the process of the rulemaking procedure, more so than the actual limits and adjustments to specific items. It was the rulemaking process of was there proper peer review? Did the process follow the guidelines of the state law? And the Court of Appeals indicated, and they had the explanation of how they did follow the rules. So I would expect that there would be more something coming down the pike as far as challenging individual rules. Maybe Dennis has some comments other than
That's
that.
my first
take on it.
Thank you, Glenn. Any other questions for Glenn?
Glenn, on a Saratoga bypass, is there a pillar in the center?
No, it's clear span all the way, and that was one of the items that was important for visibility in the reduced conflict intersection and the J turns. Sometimes if you have a center pier, you're not absolutely certain where that turn is. It looks like you might be supposed to turn at the pier. So that's one of the purposes for it to be wide open for good visibility. And we'll talk about, too, that video specific to Marshall. I think that's important.
Dennis? Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have anything additional. I am hosting a family reunion with people coming between Alaska and Maryland, are the kind of the outside parameters. Coming to Minnesota, and I am leaving for that shortly, so I'm going to cut it short tonight and take the rest of the week off to prepare.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yes.
We'll move on then to agenda item number 19, the pending items. You have those for your review.
Mayor,
Yes?
it's not on here, but I see we've got, if my information is right, our first budget work session next Tuesday.
Right.
Okay. There's a whole series of those dates I know, and they're not on these calendars here, as long as we've got them
I'll
parallel.
add those on.
We don't put our council meetings on the pending for budget work sessions. Those are listed usually on the upcoming meetings part of this is where we would put that. The pending items are mainly like working items that staff are working on that will
I'm
eventually.
talking about the calendars.
Oh, on the can.
And, I mean, you have, looking at these next three calendars, you got the regular council meetings, but not the budget session.
Oh, they're not in the upcoming ones either. Okay.
It's useful to add.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 20, the information items, building permits. Brings us then to agenda item number 21, the upcoming meetings. And agenda item number 22, to consider adjourning this meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Larry, seconded by Craig to adjourn. Discussion. We'll move to a vote. Larry, Craig. Motion passes. We're adjourned.
Better than Larry and Mo.
That's heckle. We're like staff.